Micheals, and I wanted to welcome you guys to the beading class that we have tonight that is sponsored by One Bead. We've got Danielle Wicks here with us this evening, and we are very, very excited. We're going to be working on a brick stitch hoop earring, and Danielle has been fantastic about teaching us different techniques, and we've been learning quite a bit from her. If you'd like to go back and reference some of the videos of her previous classes, we've got all the videos online at micheals.com/classes. And we will be recording the class tonight as well, and it will be posted tomorrow. So if anyone wants to reference back, you'll be able to see the video of this class tomorrow. With that, we are going to go ahead and keep the microphones on mute, just to let you know, so that way we can make sure we hear Danielle. But we've got two folks here from One Bead. We've got Carmi and Millie, who are going to help us make sure that all of your questions are answered. So go ahead and open the chat box, and any questions you have throughout the class, go ahead and put them there, and we will make sure to get answers to you right away. So with that, I hope everybody has fun tonight, learn a few things. Please ask lots of questions. We're here to help. And let me introduce you to Danielle.
Hi there. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we're going to be making brick stitch earrings, and they are on hoops. Really fun, really beginner-friendly design, and you can make them with any seed bead you like. But tonight I'm going to be using a graduated size pattern where it goes from either 11s or 10s to 8s, 6s, 8s, and then back down to 11s or 10s to make it have like a kind of wavy pattern. And then if we get time at the end, I thought I'd show you guys how to make earring cards. So these are pretty fast makes. They make great gifts, and really fun to put together as a gift that way. So if you guys are ready, we'll get started. I'm going to switch my camera. All right. And so here's a close-up of the earring that we're making. So you can see it's on. We start with these hoops here. And just a really fun style. You can use any colors you like. And the thread we're going to be using is the Wildfire 0.006. I'm using black so you can see my stitches really well. And so here's the seed beads are size 6, size 8. And I'm using size 10s tonight. You can use size 11s. The pattern PDF calls out 11s because that's what I used in those. But just for visual purposes tonight, I've gone up a size, and you can use either. They both work great. The beading needles are size 10 hard beading needles. These are from Beadalon. All right. And so the amount of thread you cut, about as long as your arm is a good length, or 30 inches. If you like to measure, 30 inches is great. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm cutting about that length.
Okay. Danielle, if I could ask just a quick question.
Sure.
Do you think this is going to be one of those classes where we can make along with you, or should we pay attention to your steps and try to make at a later date?
Oh, I think this is beginner friendly. So I'd say, yeah, make along. Brick stitch is, it's a really easy technique to learn. If you've never done bead weaving before or brick stitch before, maybe watch. There's going to be enough time for me to go through it more than once. But yeah, I think it's kind of up to you if you feel confident and want to try making it. Also, there's a replay, so if there's something that you want to go back and look at again, the replay will be up tomorrow. So let's see, these are the hoops that I'm using tonight, and they come in gold and silver. They actually have the ear wire attached. So one of the first steps I do, just so you're not going to get your thread tangled on the ear wire, is I'm using some chain nose pliers, and I'm going to open the front loop of this earring. I'm just going to remove it so we can work without it, getting caught. And we'll put that back on at the end. All right, and so threading the needle. A really good trick with wildfire to threading your needle is to pinch it and flatten it. You can even use your chain nose pliers to do that, and then it'll thread really easily. Okay. And bring that down about 7 inches. This is a stitch that's worked on one strand. So you just fold over and leave a little bit of a tail. And now take the other end, the end that your needle's not on, and tie a double knot onto the hoop itself. And don't worry about where it is right now. We're going to slide it up at the end. And try to leave a tail that's about 7 to 10 inches long. Make mine a little longer there. So about that long. And now I'm tying the double part. Okay. And what I did there is I just slid it up so that it's right next to the top. And so now I'm going to get the beads ready. These are the size 6s. The color is turquoise. The turquoise green. These are size 8. And it's in a matte teal. And these are size 10 turquoise opaques. Okay, and so I'm going to move those down a little bit so you guys can see them. Looks good. Okay, so I like to start with a size 8 seed bead. And the reason I like to do that instead of starting with the smaller one is that it will hide the knot really nicely, the knot that we tied here. And as you're sliding the first bead down, take the tail and go ahead and just feed it through that bead. And then when you pull the tail and the working thread apart, it'll pull the knot up into the bead. So it's hidden there. And so in this pattern, we're going to graduate the bead sizes up and then down, up and then down. So from 8, I want to move up to adding a 6. So pick up one size 6 seed bead and bring your needle behind the hoop component. And keep the bead outside of it and press down on the component and pull. And the bead will sit next to the one that we added first. And now go back up through that bead that we just added. And so that should sit pretty nicely there. And so we're going to do that again, but this time with a size 8. So we're graduating back down in size. There's that. And so now I'm going to add a 10. And this really gives it dimension. It gives it a little wave look on the hoop. Also, I find the 10s tend to tighten up the thread against the hoop there. There we go. And then adding an 8. Now I'm going back up. So there was a 10, now I'm adding an 8. And each time I'm pulling, I'm pushing down on the hoop. That keeps the bead from coming underneath the component with the thread. Coming back up through thread, adding a 6. Go under the hoop. Pull tight. Up through that same bead.
Danielle?
Yes.
Harmy. A couple people weren't able to get the exact earrings that you're using. So they can do this on any kind of a hoop, correct? A circle?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many opportunities to get creative with this. You can even use a key ring. Like my mom texted me earlier and she's like, the hoops are sold out. I need them. And I told her, do you have a key ring?
Perfect.
And so she's going to learn on that. You can also take 18 gauge or 20 gauge wire and make a hoop on a mandrel.
That was your next question. Can they make their own hoop, and what gauge wire would you recommend?
I would say 18 or 20. If you use 20, hammer it. If you use 18, it's going to be plenty strong.
Perfect. And you have one other request, is if you could just do it again, just a little bit slower.
Sure, yeah. I was planning to. So I'm going to set this one aside. We'll come back to it. And let's see it on gold this time. What do you think?
Yes.
Turquoise or gold. Okay. So there's that one. And so the first thing that I always do with these is just remove the ear wire so that we don't get a tangle while we're working. And then put it somewhere where you can find it later. Note to self. And so the wildfire thread, 0.006 is what I'm using tonight. And I usually cut a length that is from my shoulder to my hand. I just stretch my hand out and hold the spool at my shoulder. Or you can measure 30 inches, which would be a little longer, but you'll have plenty of thread that way. And to thread the needle, I know threading the needle can be tricky sometimes, but it really helps if you flatten it with some chainless pliers or just your fingernail. You can see, look how flat that gets. That's going to go right through the eye. A lot easier, I think, than without. There's that. I pulled that down about 7 inches or so. And this stitch is worked on one strand. And take the other end. This is the end that the needle's not attached to. Tie that around the hoop. We're going to tie a double knot onto the hoop on one side. And we'll try to leave about a 7-inch tail there. We will be using that tail to weave in at the end. So there's one knot and 2 knots. Okay, and I'm going to pull and slide that up so it's next to the top. Okay, and then starting with a size 8 seed bead, bring the seed bead down, and then take that tail thread. This is the thread we were using when we were tying the double knot, and bring it through the size 8 seed bead. And pull the working thread and the tail apart. And it hides the knot inside the bead. I could feel it snap in there when I tightened it like that. I could feel the knot go right there. And so that makes it really secure. It's tight on the hoop and you can't see the knot. Okay, and so the way this stitch is worked is it graduates. Actually, let me show you on the same color sample. So it graduates up. So you're starting with 8 and then going to a 6 and 8, down to a 10 or an 11, back up to an 8 to a 6. So that's all I'm doing is I'm just making a little wave just by changing the size of the seed bead. But it looks really cool. So from here, I'm going to grab a size 6 seed bead and bring your needle behind the hoop component. Keep the bead on the thread outside of the hoop component and press down on it just a little bit and pull. And the bead will sit next to the first bead you added. And then come up through the bead you just added. Pull tight. And it should sit right there. And so now I'm going to add another 8. And pressing down on the hoop. And come back up through the 8. And so you start to see that wave. Now I'm picking up a 10. And again, going behind the hoop. Pressing down on the hoop. Pulling tight. And then come back up through that size 10 seed bead. And pull tight. And then going back up by adding an 8. And press down on the hoop. And go through the 8. And if it moves like that, don't worry about it. It just comes right back when you tighten it. I'm adding a 6 now. So you can get the idea of these are a really fast earring to create. And there we're already a fourth of the way done in just that short amount of time.
Danielle, just a couple of questions from the sidebar. The
Sure.
goal is to make sure that the bead is sitting on the wire with the hole facing up.
Yeah, and it'll do that automatically without you really having to force it to. It'll just sit on the side of the hoop. And earlier when we mentioned like using a key ring, it'll do that even easier because that's got a flat surface on the side. But even on this round hoop, which has the look of, I think, 18 gauge, it's sitting right there without me having to really make any effort at all.
Great.
So what do you think? Should I show it one more time?
Yes, you do have a couple of people who are definitely beading along with you.
Okay.
So they'd love to see it start to finish again.
Okay.
That we were saying, this is one of those stitches, once you learn it, you will use it all the time.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a really nice stitch. And it's versatile too. It's actually, if you think back to the brick stitch earrings, the ones that we made with the fringe, same stitch. And you can add to it. You can add to the top of it. So I'm removing the ear wire just to get it out of the way while we stitch. And cutting a length of wildfire thread. And the length, you won't need a lot. It doesn't use a lot of thread, but I said 30 inches on the instructions just to make sure there's lots of extra, for the tail and for weaving in on both sides. But you can get away with just shoulder to the length of your hand. And that'll be fine. With your arm outstretched. I'm usually holding that spool at my shoulder and then just kind of pulling. So now what I'm doing is I'm flattening it with the chain nose pliers so it'll thread in the needle easier. And so it flattens, this thread flattens down when you do that. It just makes it really easy to thread. I pulled it down about 7 or so inches, folding it over. And I'm going to bring the tail end and tie it to the hoop using a double knot. And with this knot, you'll want to leave another length of tail that you can weave in. So I would say another 7 inches. And there's one set of knot and a second. Slide that up to the top. And pick up a size 8 seed bead. Bring it down. And then pick up the tail thread. And bring the tail thread through that size 8 seed bead. And when you pull so getting my needle back, pull the tail thread and the working thread in opposite directions. And when you pull tight, you'll feel the knot move inside the bead. essentially hiding your knot. And so this stitch it's a graduated stitch, so it goes from 8, 6, back down to an 8, into a 10, up to an 8, to a 6, 8, 10, and so on until you get to the other side. So now I've added a 6. I'm going to go behind the hoop component with my needle, keeping that bead on the outside of the hoop. Push down on the hoop and pull, and he'll sit right next to the one you just added. And then go back through the size 6 seed bead that we added. And you see how it's moving? Don't sweat that. It will go right back, see, when you pull. And I'm adding an 8. And go behind the component. Move that bead down onto the thread and push down on the component. I'm pushing it into the mat. And pull. Turn and go through the 8. And see, it moves a little bit, it goes right back in place. And this is a 10. And earlier we mentioned 11s are great here too, 10 or 11. I'm just using 10s because I want you to be able to see the beading, just a little easier.
Danielle, would you ever add more than one bead at a time, or is it the one bead that's the reason why it works?
In brick stitch, what you'll see is one bead at a time until you start a new row. And then when you start a new row, at the start of every new row, you'll add 2. That way you, I can show you really quick just right here. So for example, if I wanted to turn and make my second row right now, what I would do is I would pick up 1, 2, turn, go through the second thread bridge and pull, and go back up through that bead. And then every bead here and after would need to be added 1 at a time. So now I'm going through that second one. But yes, for what we saw when we started this hoop, we actually did add 2 as the first part of this row, but I wanted to hide the knot, so I isolated him alone and just pulled those apart. But in brick stitch, yeah, it's always 2 beads in the first stitch of every row. And I'm just getting those guys back off here. Yeah, this is a really fun design because what you can do is once you've completed one row around, you can go back and add another layer on top, just the way I was just showing you.
Yeah, people are quite curious about where they can go from here. So can they add beads to the inside? Absolutely. Can they add a second row? Absolutely.
Oh yeah. In fact, you can, what I'm doing here, you can do it on the inside. Same process.
That's awesome.
I think this is one of my favorite stitches. It's second to herringbone stitch, obviously, but it is up there among my favorite ones. I'm always brick stitching everything. When I first learned this stitch, I went through this phase where like I stitched on everything. I'm like, oh, I can stitch on that. The most random stuff. You would have laughed.
Danielle, I'm going to let you, as you're going through this, just tell them exactly what you're doing.
Okay. So this is, I'm finishing up one of these hoops by just adding a graduated series of different size seed beads that'll give it a look that's wavy. And so I started with an 8, and then I went up to a 6, an 8, back and down to a 10, up to an 8, up to a 6. And so completing that pattern, I'm going to pick up another 8, going behind the hoop component, push down on the hoop component, and pull. And go back through that same bead. Behind the component with a size 10, pressing down on the hoop, pull tight, and then turn and go over the hoop component through the bead. And there. It moves a little bit, there you go. And so yeah, it's just any size beads, any pattern you like, any colors you want.
Danielle, would you recommend for a real beginner that they use the biggest beads and just use one size bead maybe for their first effort, or is this just as easy?
I feel like it's just as easy, and in fact, these small beads, they tend to lock it in place easier. The larger the bead you're using, the more movement you're going to get. And so for a beginner, a good beginner size would be size 8. It's got a good trade-off between moving around a little too much. The 6s are, I have to kind of finesse those a little bit. And then the 10s are great. 10s and 11s are great, but they, when you're just learning and you want a project to be complete, you're going to be working for a long time and with a lot of thread to get that to go all the way around if you were just using 10s. So I would say 8s. If you want to just do one size around, just start with size 8 seed beads.
Great. We've had a couple people ask, obviously, about the finishing too, because you've got that tail there.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a sample ready to go to show finishing. But I can show you on this one too. We'll probably want to go through that a couple times, I think.
Yep.
So to finish, you can take another needle and thread it. I'm flattening so I can thread it easier. Okay. And so just pretend I have the rest of that done there. Bring down about that much. Okay, so my thread is exiting the size 8 that I added first. And remember, I've got a knot in there. So I'm not going to want to go back through that. I'm going to go through the 6 that's next to it. Go down. Loop around. So I'm on the top of the hoop right now. I'm going to go behind the hoop. And now what I'm doing here is I'm going to flip this over so I can see going through that size 6. I went down it, went in front of the hoop, behind the hoop. Essentially, I'm following the same thread path that we did with the first stitch. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go through the 8 now. So I'm over the hoop here. Pull through. I go behind. And turning it over just so I can see. And go back up through that same bead, the 8 that we went down. And that's pretty tight right there, but just to be double sure, you can go down another one. Through. And pull. Turn it over. And go up and through that 10. And pull tight. From here, you can take your needle off. And you can use flush cutters, scissors, thread runner if you've got it. And if you're using any kind of snips, like the scissors, do so under tension. Push down with the scissors and pull up with the thread and cut. And there you go. And you would do the same thing with the thread on the other side. You'd work all the way around. And I can show that again on this one. Let me do that really quick. So this one, we went all the way around and we completed that side. Lots of needle threading. Here we go. Okay, so I'm exiting that 8. I'm going to go back down through the adjacent bead, which in the case of my finished sample here, it ended up working out as a 10. Go down. I'm in front of the hoop here, going behind the hoop, flipping it over and going back up through that same bead. So I'm actually just tracing that stitch. Down through that 8, I'm over the hoop component. And keep going. I go through around that side, turn it over, and go up through the 8. And go down through the 6. Through the component. And turn it over. And back up through that 6. And since this is a 6, you could go one more. This stitch is going to hold tighter in a smaller bead. And now back up. So this is the front of the component. I'm going up the 8. And so you see I've just essentially traced my stitches through 4 beads. And then to trim it, take some scissors or flush cutters, push down with them and pull up on the thread. So I'm actually lifting it right now and push. And that gets it as short as possible. And there you go.
Danielle, how much time would you give yourself to make a pair of earrings?
Every time you make it, you'll be so much faster than the last time. A beginner may need an hour, but you can make one of these in 10-15 minutes. So yeah, half an hour, you'll have a new pair of earrings. And another cool thing is, I did this one kind of off a little bit so I could show you. It is possible to slide them if you need to. You can work them like that.
Oh,
handy in case. And
that looks good.
Yeah. Oops, and I moved him a little bit. There we go. And so once you finished weaving in, do you guys want to see weaving in one more time?
I don't think they'll ever tire of seeing it one more time.
Okay, gotcha. I'm going to weave this one in so we can complete an earring. All right. So again, just flattening that end so I can thread it. And going into whichever bead is the second one from the one you're exiting. Right now I'm exiting a 10 here. So I'm going to go through this 8. The needle's over the hoop component right now. I'm going to go through and behind it. So to put it through the bead, I flipped it over. I'm around the back now, and then back up through that same bead. Going through the next one, needles over the hoop, going through, behind it, turn, and go up. And again, I'm going down the next bead next to that, on top of the component, go through, and then turn, and back up through the 8. I'll go through one more just so that it's totally secure. 3 is probably enough. 4 is perfect. So there we go. Oops, my needle's coming unthreaded there. I'll fix that really quick. I think it'll make it. It'll make it. Yay. Okay. And that's that. We just traced the thread path through 4 beads. And now we're going to snip this by pushing down with the scissors and pulling up with the thread and hiding it. And if you use any kind of other, flush cutters, it will probably go a little flatter, but you won't see that after a while. You can just kind of work it down the tail.
And Danielle, quite a few people have asked in the past is you're not using knots, extra knots. You're always hiding your thread this way.
Yeah, and it's style. Honestly, it's just style. Like a lot of people do a knot with this stitch, and that's great. And because this is such a fast make, I wouldn't worry about repairing it. My reason for not doing knots in other types of pieces is making it easier for me to repair. But if, for example, if you didn't like seeing these extra stitches, they don't bother me, but if you didn't want to see them with this stitch, you could go down through 1 bead, and then you could needle through, come back around, and go through your loop. pull tight, come back up, you'd have a knot there. And that'd be fine. You could do that. You don't have to, but it's, again, it's just style. If you like to tie a knot, and it's totally up to you.
And Danielle, for a real beginner person, if they're having difficulty keeping that thread to stay, any tips again about how you're handling the thread in your hand on the bead mat?
Yeah, it really helps if you push down on the component. I'm gonna bring this one back over really quick. I think it really helps to put pressure on it, push it into the bead mat, so that when you pick up your next bead, you can see going behind it. If I held this in my hand right now, I'd just be kind of moving everywhere and be confused. There's a way to do it, you know, you can pinch and pull.
We've had a lot of people ask us for you to pick it up, and I've been reinforcing you need that matte flat surface to get that stitch looking so pretty.
Yeah, and I would say for a beginner that's essential. I know if you're an advanced bead weaver, this is too slow probably, and you'd want to have the speed of holding it. Totally fine, you can do that. But if you've just, you know, like if you've never done brick stitch before, it's a lot easier to get the concept of behind it and over it by seeing it this way, I felt like. But definitely know an advanced technique would be to just pick it up. And often people use their index finger and they just pull. And I'm pinching it the whole time. If you're able to left brain, right brain, get your hands to do different things at the same time. I'm not a knitter, I'm a crocheter, so it's actually very hard for me to do both hands doing something different. Which kind of kept me out of piano, but.
So Danielle, for the people who may have missed it, the hoop earrings that you're using comes already with the earring attachment. So
yes. Yeah, they do. They come like this.
Show them how to return it back to its final.
Yeah, and so assuming you didn't lose your earring component, not speaking from experience or anything, asking for a friend, yeah, you would put the ear wire back on. Earlier when I opened it like that. There you go. So like this. I'm putting it back on. And that's there. If you want, you can tighten it a little bit. It doesn't need it, but this is a really strong, it's not a loose wire. This wire takes some effort with the pliers, which is good. It's not going to move once you've got it attached.
Danielle, I've seen on your pages too, do you sometimes use this as a pendant as opposed to earrings?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a really gorgeous pendant, and you can do that with ease. You could put a bail on here or just a jump ring and then run a chain through it. You could drop a charm in the center. If you wanted to drop a charm in the center, two ways. You could either add a very large jump ring over this, or you could stitch. Once you're here, you've exited here, go back down through this bead, go around, come back up. And then instead of going this way like we did, go back this way and come through, add a few seed beads, add a jump ring and a charm, add a few more seed beads and come out over here, go back through here, go down and around, down and around, down and around. And then you have a charm in the center.
Great. We're good for time right now. If there are some people who are a little bit more experienced beaders who are curious about the second row. So yeah. If you wouldn't mind just demonstrating the second row option.
Yeah, no, totally. Let's go. I'm going to take this ear wire off this one. Okay. So I'm going to get this to be just a tad longer really quick.
That's great because we can see you how you would stitch quickly without worrying.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
How fast do you do it?
Ludicrous speed. I try not to lose track of what I've done though. I have made mistakes not to pull them out. Did that today on the ones I was making today. Okay.
It looks like the camera's fast forwarding.
I love doing that with video, you know, the time lapse. A friend of mine did it with a Cricut video, and she was doing what they call weeding with the Cricut tool, pulling out in a mandala, one of those mandala prints. She did it so fast, and I'm like, how you? She's like, yeah, that was time lapse. She was like, okay, that should probably be okay to show. Okay, so adding a second row. One of the things with adding a second row is getting a layer that can add larger beads, for example, or you know, just getting a different color on there. You can work the first row in just all one size, and then do your second row with a wave like this. But since I've already got a wave here, I'm thinking I'll just reinforce what I've got and add the same size beads on top of the existing ones. It'll be offset by about half a bead length. You'll see that. But what I've done here, I'm switching directions now and picking up 2 beads. I picked up a 6 and an 8. Whichever bead you pick up first will sit on the one that's on the end. And now I'm going to go and pick up a thread bridge, which is the second thread bridge here. Pull tight. Go up through the 6. And a trick too, do you see this space here? You can lock that down, going down through that bead. And go back up through the one that's next to it.
And this is the stitch you demonstrated in our first class, I think.
It is, yeah. The second one, the fringe earrings.
Fringe earrings.
It's the exact same step, and it's really, so when we did that one, we were decreasing. So we had one row that started with 12 beads, and the next one had 11, and the next one had 10. On a hoop component like this, you don't want to decrease. You just want to kind of follow what you have. So that's where brick stitch can get a little tricky, is you're going to have to kind of guesstimate as you're making it which bridge to use. You won't always use the next one because the beads are different sizes and you're on a curve, and depending on what component you're on, you may or may need to go into the same thread bridge twice or skip a thread bridge. And so you just have to feel it while you're working. So in this case, you see I have a lot of space here. I've used the first and the second thread bridges. My first one was covered up by this bead, and my second one I used this one. Just make sure you guys can see that. I used this thread bridge already. And what the thread did is it kind of tightened and it moved back. It's hanging here. I've got a lot of space there. If I was to go and use my third thread bridge, I'll show you. We can pull it out. But the bead's now it's gonna kind of go like that. So what I'd probably do for this one, and there's no right way or wrong way to do this, but I'd probably use that same thread bridge again. So this is thread bridge number 2.
So this will be for people who, after they've made their first set of earrings, or a few, if they want to add a second row.
Yeah, exactly.
Danielle, people want to know, how do you keep your stitch in place? Because a couple people are doing it and their thread is a little bit loose, so the beads are not staying tight.
On the first row?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see, I'm gonna switch over to, it's kind of one of those things where, especially if we're talking about the first 2 beads you added, those are gonna move around a little bit. I just keep pushing down on the hoop component into the mat and pulling in this direction. And doing that with the first couple of stitches. Once you get about this far, it's not moving anymore. It's just, it's true with every bead stitch, is those first couple of iterations, things are moving around. And you can also, you know, once you've tried building your first row, if you don't like it, you can go back through and reinforce it and then just come back.
You could reinforce, yes.
Yeah, you could stitch, like when you get to the end, if you're like, you know, I think I just want to go around. It's really pretty. Seeing the thread is pretty. It will sit right on top of the former thread. You just go all the way back and then just knot together with your tail thread.
And Danielle, just watching our time, I think a lot of people always want to know how do they gift these earrings, or what's a great way to maybe have them in a sale, or if they're a vendor, how do you do it?
Oh, it's really fun. I'm gonna move these guys really quick. So one of the funnest things to do is to make your own earring cards. And here's one I made earlier. And you can just put the earrings and you can put them inside of a jewelry box. You can put them in a greeting card if you have like a really pretty greeting card. Cut it to the same size and put it in the card and slide it in the envelope. And I do that with, you know, a nice sticker on the back. And I can show you guys how I made this.
Yes.
I'm gonna move it over here. And I'm gonna switch my camera really quick to one that's up a little higher. There we go. Okay. And there we are. I'm gonna move this one out of the way. So Micheals has the most wonderful cardstock selection. And I spend a lot of time in the paper section just looking at really great colors. And so let's see, I'm thinking this turquoise. What do you guys think? Let's see if I can get it to come out. Is that too bright? But I like it with the teal, so I thought we'd try this one. And so this is a slider. So we're in the scrapbooking section now. This is one of those paper slider cutters. And if you know your box dimensions or your greeting card dimensions, cut it down 1/4 inch smaller than whatever you're putting it into. So if you're putting it in a 3x3 box, cut 2 1/4 by 2 1/4, and it'll fit really nicely in there. I'm gonna go for, say, like a greeting card. So yeah, maybe like 3 1/2 or so. So here's the measurements here on the top.
I really like that you spend as much time making your project look good when you're giving it away as you are in the making of it. So this is a wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I get excited about gifting and packaging things as much as the making of the jewelry. That part's really fun. And so this would probably fit in a good jewelry box or a nice, you know, greeting card. And this is an earring punch, speed landing, and it's awesome. You can make, so for example, a business card into an earring card with this. And you just slide the card in here and give it a punch. And there you go. Let me get my earring from earlier here. And he needs an ear wire, so I'll grab his ear wire. Put that back on there.
Melly was answering a couple people who wanted to know if they can use this with the earring where you don't have the hole. Sorry.
Oh, so let's see. Are they asking about a post or kidney wire, or?
You could attach that to any type of earring component as long as they had a jump ring, and
Yeah,
there are definitely other posts that they can use.
Yeah, they're asking about clip-on earrings. So I said for the little jump ring there, we can attach any type of earring on top, including clip-on or post or.
Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the you know, because these open up, if you had, for example, a lever back ear wire, you could get a lever back in there.
That's great.
Yeah, just a really handy. There's also these little plastic, they look like little petals, and you can put them on the back of the ear wire to make them not fall off the card. And those are in the jewelry section.
I think we call those ear nuts.
Is that what they're called? Yeah, I was just diving for the word and my mind was blank. Yeah. I'm gonna bring these back over so you can see how fun it is just to play with the colors, and you don't have to use a solid. You can go and get, you know, like a ocean scene and hang a seashell in the center. My mind goes wild coming up with ideas. It's all the fun things you can do.
Definitely. Well, I think that covers everything, Laura.
Yeah, I think we've all learned a lot, and I appreciate everybody asking so many great questions. Do we have any final questions before we sign off for the evening? I see the hole punch. What is the hole punch called?
Oh,
It's the earring display card punch.
yep, and the Micheals SKU number, so the number you would type into like the search engine on the Micheals app is it's on the PDF, but it's 102222800. That's 102222800. Type that into the app and it'll come right up. This is the underside looks like.
You're getting quite a few people saying they're definitely going to make these. So I look forward to seeing other people's projects.
Me too.
I know you'll post them, and Micheals will post them. And Laura, we're coming back for classes in August, so we have a lot to look forward to.
We have a lot of exciting things happening in August, so definitely come back. We've got classes with Danielle. I think we're going to shift over to Tuesdays at 3 o'clock with Danielle, so we're kind of doing a little time change, see if we can try that out, see if it works for everybody. Her next project is a multi-strand bracelet. So if you want to talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah, and I have a sample I made to match the earrings I'm wearing. I tried to finish it, but I've got the stitch done. Let me get that for you. And I'll switch back to this camera really quick so you guys.
We're uploading the class details right now, so those will probably be live by tomorrow. So if everybody could register for that one as well.
Let's get the autofocus on there. Is it working, guys? It went to sleep, so now it's waking up. There we go. Okay, so it's a wavy stitch. And this is made with the same beads that are on my earring. So you can have a little set. And it's multi-strand.
The matching bracelet concept.
Yeah, I'm back to, I love doing that. It's so fun.
Danielle, do you have your multi-strand bracelet that we're teaching in the first August class? Actually, I probably have it.
Do you have it? Yeah, Laura, this is the same
Laura, I have the sample and it's in photography. So we will post it as soon as we can.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Danielle, I appreciate your time and expertise. You're always such a great teacher and patient with us. We love being able to go back and watch it multiple times. So thank you for being patient with us as we're learning, you know, myself included over here. It helps to see you going through the steps over and over again. So for those of you who are enjoying Danielle's classes, this is actually her 4th class that she has taught with us so far. They're all kept at micheals.com/classes. It's the same place that you registered for this. As well, we've got a bunch of other jewelry classes too. We've had Beadalon and Impress Art have been on there previously. So there's some good content as well as all other different types of crafts that we have available at Micheals. So we keep all of our classes in that particular spot. So micheals.com/classes. And if you have kids, we have a wealth of kids videos there as well. So lots of fun ways to craft. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Millie and Carmen. I appreciate your time tonight and hope you all enjoyed it and learned a few new tricks, and we'll see you at the next class. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.